the words that he said. He said this: "We fear women will do to us what we have done to them." We fear women will do to us what we will do to them. And I think that's what's at the heart of issues around gender equality and justice, is that there is a lot of fear of what will happen. Will I lose my power? Will I lose my status? And I'm sure that there are other fears that you can think about. But it shows that actually we can hide behind cultures, we can hide behind stereotypes, we can hide behind tradition. But I think that what's underlie it all is fear. And we remember that do not fear is said and mentioned 365 times in the Bible, one for every day. So I say to you, do not fear gender justice. Do not fear gender equality, because it's a part of our discipleship to Christ. So what is gender? What am I talking about when I talk about gender? Well, it's about the characteristics of women and men, girls and boys, that are socially constructed. And that is really important. They're socially constructed so they can change. And it includes norms and behaviours and roles associated with being a man or a woman or a boy and a girl, as well as those relationships with one another. And the key issue is it changes over time. So what was a stereotype or a role of a man and a role of a woman 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago is different to what it is today, and will be different to what it is in the future. And that's key, because I often get told, oh, this is our tradition, this is our culture, it doesn't change. Actually, we change our traditions and our cultures all the time. 30 years ago, 40 years ago, we didn't use mobile phones. And yet now it's part of our culture. We expect everybody to be able to use mobile phones and WhatsApp messages, so our culture changes. Thank you. So we know that it changes, and it changes over time, so we can change things. And this is about, like I say, our transformation. It's our transformation into the discipleship of Christ. And the work on gender often revolves around relationships and power and control. So for me, a key question to ask is, how is what we are doing affecting relationships? Are we bringing them closer into a likeness of Christ, or are we, by our attitudes and our actions and our behaviours, pushing them apart? And it's also about power. Who has the power? Who is using that power? Are they misusing or abusing that power? And are they using it well? You know, unfortunately for us, we've got an example of Jesus. We see in Luke 8, verses 41 to 56, which you will all know is the story of Jairus' daughter and the woman bleeding. And in that, we see Jesus as a great example of how he breaks through the stereotypes of the day. We know that Jairus has come to him pleading for the life of his daughter, and Jesus honours that, something that was countercultural in the day, you know, a religious leader pleading for the life of a woman. And if we, you know, the Jewish prayers of, you know, thanking God that I'm a man and not a woman, you know, Jesus breaks through and says, yes, the life of the girl is of value. And then on his way, the woman, as we know, touches the hem of his garments, and power flows out of him freely, and the woman is healed. And then he stops. Jairus is an important religious leader, and he stops and makes time for the outcast woman, who we don't know the name of, who has no power in that society, and yet he raises her up and treats her as equal, worthy of respect, worthy of dignity, worthy of his time. And the words out of Jesus' mouth when she comes before him trembling, and the first word he says to her is, daughter. Daughter, part of my family, included, of value, worthy. Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace. Not my power. Your faith has healed you. Jesus freely giving away power. And we see in that example of Jesus so many principles about the good use of power and how he treats men and women equally, counterculturally in the way that he handles that situation. Transformative power. And that's what we need. We need that formation and good structure to handle power well. And you'll see on a slide that Daniela is going to bring up in a minute, is about how we can use power well. Can we bring that slide up? Just skip across a few. There, that one. Thank you. Here we see a Formula One car, a very fast, powerful car with a powerful engine in it. And then we see a second-hand car that is clapped out, not going to go very far. If we put the Formula One engine, the powerful engine, in the second-hand car that is battered, it's not going to last very long. It will fall apart. It will break down. It will be destroyed. We need a good structure to handle the power well. So we need to form ourselves into a likeness of Christ so that when we're given power, we know how to handle it well, we know how to use it well, so that we don't misuse it or abuse it, or worse, that we ourselves break down because we're not using it well. And that's at the heart of gender, is looking at those equal power in the relationships, looking at each of us made in that image of God. Because when we don't use power well, it can result in the abuse of power. And we talked a little bit about this on about safe church safeguarding earlier in the week, is that can lead to abuse. And the United Nations informs us that 1 in 3 women globally will be subjected to abuse in her lifetime. And that's mostly by their husbands or former partners, i.e. domestic abuse. 1 in 3. And yes, men are abused too, but that's mostly by other men in same-sex relationships. So the vast majority is men abusing and doing the abusing. And that's hard to face. I get that. It's a hard reality to face, but that is the reality. And if we're going to change it, we need to face that reality. And it's not just outside the church. It's in our churches too. And most likely in this room. It could be. With the number of people in this room, there will be women. And in fact, I know there are women in this room who have been abused. The Anglican Church of Australia commissioned research into the levels of domestic abuse in their churches, and this is what they found. If you keep going on. This is what they found. Is that the levels, sadly it didn't shock me, but you will see on the slide that the levels of domestic abuse were the same inside the Anglican churches as outside of it. And that if you're a church-going Anglican, that you were same or higher than other Anglicans. So basically, if you're a church-going Anglican woman, you are more likely or the same likely to be abused. Devastating research that the Anglican Church of Australia is now putting in programs to address. And when we talk about gender-based violence, what we're talking about is physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, psychological abuse, verbal abuse and financial abuse, and sometimes maybe spiritual abuse. It's basically about power and how we're handling it. And it refers to the harmful acts directed at an individual based on their gender, and it is rooted in gender inequality and abuse of harmful norms. So as a result, you can see that when we're talking about gender, it affects all of our discipleship, all of our programs, and in our churches, and we need to address it. And there is some good work going on. Just to give you one example, and I'm hoping that you will show some examples on your tables in a minute, is Reverend Dominic Misolo in Kenya. He's working with men and masculinities to prevent and end gender-based violence, talking to them directly about what is going on. We have also produced, as part of the Anglican Communion, some resources for you. So this resource, Theology and Gender-Based Violence is available to download in several languages on the International Anglican Communion's website. I do encourage it to you. It was created by theologians from across the communion to help you read, understand, discuss these issues within your church context. So I do highly recommend that. And there's also resources outside on domestic abuse. But overall, I think the message that I want to get across is gender equality is not to be feared. It is actually beneficial to us as a church. It helps us be an example to others of that transformative life that we get in Christ. That it's an upside down world. It's God's economy, not the world's economy, as we've heard earlier in the week. And we treat people with equal dignity and respect. But I want to ask you the question for discussion on your tables. Are our church cultures complicit in enabling gender inequality and gender injustice to go unchallenged? Is it complicit? Are our church cultures complicit in enabling gender inequality and gender injustice to go unchallenged? And if so, what are we doing about it? Okay, so I'll give you 10 minutes to discuss on your table and then we will come back. Thank you. Oh, there it is. Ah, there you go. Oh, look at that. You've got an extra 30 seconds of discussion. I know that you've only just started your discussions, so feel free to keep in your groups and just keep discussing during the breaks. And obviously I'm available and around for the rest of the week. If you've got any particular thoughts that you want to share, do share them either on the Bible study email that you've got regarding gender justice, or email me, come and see me, get a card. I'd be happy to have conversations with you and chat with you around those issues. I want to introduce to you now the Venerable Carol Hughes, who is the chair of the International Anglican Women's Network. We know you've all read the reports on gender justice and the International Anglican Women's Network before you got here. So Carol will talk to you about some of what we've been doing and some challenges for you.
Kia ora. Greetings from the International Anglican Women's Network. As a network of Anglican women across our communion, we are delighted to be represented here today in the presence of people who deeply care about just structures in our church and in our world, and who are Christ-centred in word and in action. It is with that in mind that I stand here as the chair of the International Anglican Women's Network Steering Group, it's quite a mouthful, to offer some thoughts that hopefully will lead to intentional, bold, prophetic, transformative actions around the focus of Mark 4 of our mission statement, which we are considering today. Our hope is that collectively we can transform unjust structures in our church and in our world, and to challenge violence of every kind, more particularly around gender inequalities. As an Anglican Women's Network, our priorities include promoting gender equality across all areas of ministry and decision making, sharing our situations and our stories across the communion, supporting all who are working to eradicate all forms of gender-based violence, including human trafficking, advocating for education and health care for women and girls, advocating eradication of extreme poverty and hunger and environmental abuse, promoting physical well-being for women and girls, and supporting women's sustainable economic empowerment. So it feels like we're trying to change the whole world. No pressure there. Of course, this work is done in partnership with many people around the globe, including other networks and organisations. The question is, how can we as the Anglican Communion, us here today, transform unjust structures and seek to eradicate gender-based violence? It can just feel overwhelming. Well, we start with Scripture, and Mandy has offered us some really helpful tools to embrace Scripture through the lens of Jesus as a transformer of gender justice, including the God's Justice resource, which I was one of the writers. In addition to this, and the priorities I've just highlighted of the IAWN, I have 4 further points to offer to get us thinking about actions that transform. And we'll have an opportunity in a moment to get into groups and talk about our experiences and what we can do. But my 4 points are to get us thinking. Firstly, For violence to be challenged and peace and reconciliation to occur, all genders need to work together. That is the most important point I will make today. All genders need to work together. Violence is not a women's issue. Everyone in this room has a role to play. Men need to stand up for women who are marginalised and abused in any setting, and women to stand up for men and all who work outside gender stereotypes and who are condemned for it. Let's celebrate and work positively together with gender differences. It's exciting. We are all not the same, and we bring different and diverse gifts to the table. So if women are not at the boardroom table, in the sanctuary, at any meeting, or sharing the gospel in any context, I invite you to ask the question, why? And more importantly, what can you do about it? Remembering that it was Mary who firstly encountered the risen Christ, and the first to tell the good news. It was a woman. Secondly, we need to recognise that gender language we use for humanity and for God can and does exclude many people and lead to unjust structures. Simply put, if one gender dominates in the language that we use to describe ourselves or our communities or God, then power can be given to one gender over another, even if it is in our subconscious. And that power can lead to unjust relationships and justification for gender-based violence and exclusion of women in leadership. And we have experienced, and we continue to experience that in the institutional church. Our scriptures offer many images of God that are feminine as well as masculine, or better still, gender neutral. We know that theological language informs who we are and how we interpret our world and the world to come. Let us then be bold, prophetic, transformative leaders for gender justice by using the wonderful many diverse images reflected in our scriptures that do not bias one gender over another when we do theology. Thirdly, many provinces are putting in place safe church practices with zero tolerance of violence and abuse. This is vital as it becomes part of our legislation and, more importantly, part of the way we live together. The ideal is that we model to our wider societies inspirational, just, inclusive church communities that take risks to reach out to the vulnerable and not just listen to them, but change the unjust structures of our institutions. Our aim is to provide places and spaces where peace and reconciliation are fully realised to all people through the positive actions that we take. The fourth point is simply to highlight the need to mentor and offer models and role models to one another and within the communities in which we serve around us that embrace gender difference. This could involve enabling men to mentor one another, to improve self-understanding and raise consciousness on the effects of harmful gender stereotypes that drive abuse and exclusion, and equipping women to mentor women and girls to improve self-understanding and raise consciousness on their potential. And it is not just the older generation that need the mentoring to the young. Our young people model to us what it means to be just, bold, prophetic, and transformative. We need to listen to them. The power of role modelling cannot be underestimated. We need to see people in leadership who are like us. So let's look at who our leaders are and what we are saying to our world by that image. Does it indeed fit the full image of who God intended and created us to be? If not, then together we need to pay attention to creating more diverse role models in our leadership so that unjust gender structures are transformed. So to summarise, let us work together and celebrate our gender differences in all that we do. May we pray to our God, in whose image we are made, with no gender bias. May our churches be places of safe practices for all people, and violence is never justified. May the leadership and mentoring we offer and receive from one another be positively bold, prophetic, transformative and diverse, so that our full mission statement is fulfilled and peace and reconciliation is fully realised. Kia ora, peace be with you. So my question for you to discuss in groups is, how is gender justice addressed in your province and what difference has it made? But probably more importantly, and please get onto this fairly quickly, what more can be done? That's what I want you to take home with you. What more can be done? Got about 10 minutes.
comments or questions? Hey, thanks. Do email us at iawn at anglicancommunion.org and we can pick that up, or at the same email address as the Bible studies. That would be great. But now I want to introduce to you the International Anglican Peace and Justice Network, and to start us off we've got Clifton Ned, and then he will be followed by Canon Reed Simon. So thank you. Clifton, over to you.
Good morning, everyone. We're here from the Anglican Peace and Justice Network, and we're pleased today to present to you make brief presentation, sorry, I'm a little bit unsettled this morning, on what the Peace and Justice Network has been doing so far, and to also engage further with you on some of the issues you've been discussing in the Bible studies and around your tables. So to take us through most of the presentation, I would invite Ken and Simon, and I will come back to you at the end for the discussion. Thank you.
Good morning again. Our slides are up. So the Anglican Peace and Justice Network has a long history of giving voice to concerns about injustice, abuse and violence that arise in our many local communities and contexts. We as a network always share hope with one another to the ways that our members are addressing these concerns and seeking to transform them into relations that reflect the gospel's call to justice, reconciliation, and unity with God through Jesus Christ. The network is a gathering place for any and all Anglican Communion members in seeking justice, peace, and reconciliation for their communities, to share news and concerns that are on our hearts, or on their hearts, to often share thoughtful reflections on ways to help bring about justice, reconciliation, and peace, to share resources for peace building with one another, pray together and pray for one another, to bring Christ-centered hope, compassion, and empowerment into our lives and communities, support one another's efforts to transform injustice and build peaceable relationships. Our third slide, sharing news and concerns. One of the ways that we share news or concerns as they happen is through Facebook group Anglicans for Peace with Justice. Here we can also offer comments about why this is urgent or critical. Concerns are important to share. They affect our ability to live out the gospel's call to peace and unity with one another. To be a Christ-centered communion, we need to know and care for what is occurring to brothers and sisters in other parts of the world. The Bunia Peace Center, and I'm hoping that I have that correction, pronunciation right, Bunia Peace Center. One of the members of our steering group, our Reverend Bisoke, a national youth worker for the Anglican province of Congo, has shared the work of the Peace Center near Bunia in the Northeast Democratic Republic of Congo, where some of the most violent conflict and fighting continues. The Peace Center offers food and water to those who are displaced by the violence. It also helps women and children to heal from the trauma of rape, abuse, and other violence, offering them both psychological and spiritual counseling and support. There are opportunities as well for women to learn and improve skills that can give hope to their future. Above all, the Peace Center helps people rebuild their lives through strengthening their relationship with Jesus Christ in a supportive religious community. The center also offers workshops for peace building, so far training more than 50 leaders. Dishwanelo is the Botswana Center for Human Rights, founded by our network member Alice Mogwe. In 2021, she received the prestigious Friedrich Ebert Stiftung of Human Rights Awards for the work that Dishwanelo has done for those who are marginalized in Botswanan society. She also served as president of the International Federation of Human Rights. Now, is a poem, I think on slide 5, about gender-based violence, and it was written by Rose Mumba of Zambia. It honors Regional Women Human Rights Defenders Day, which was the 29th of November. Sharing reflections. Our website offers a collection of reflections from scholars and leaders in justice and reconciliation work, as well as peace building. The website also shares resources from different cultures and contexts for listening, conflict transformation, healing communities, and reconciliation. We are always looking for resources to share, resources that have worked well in different contexts, resources that may inspire new and creative ways to build peace and reconciliation. Prayer. We pray for one another. Prayer changes hearts and changes lives. Our network also joins in prayer campaigns to bring transformation, such as the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. We also pray for environmental justice and for peace in troubled regions around the Anglican Communion. Support for one another's group efforts. We seek to join other networks and groups where we share common hopes or concerns. We have joined with the International Anglican Women's Network. We sponsored a resolution restoring unity through gender justice. I believe that is presented today, and we are supporting that. The Lambeth Call, Pathway to Justice, Peace and Reconciliation. We strongly support the Lambeth Call on reconciliation and seek to help reconciliation become a reality across the Anglican Communion. As our network looks forward, we see your increased involvement as a way to build supportive relationships across the Anglican Communion. We seek to learn about resources that have helped you and help us transform injustice and to share them with others. We also seek to share your experience and solutions for transforming violence into mutually just and respectful relations. And there we have a photograph of those who attended our meeting, at least in person, in 2019, along with those who were able to join us via the phone.
Thank you, Ken and Simon. There should be another slide that has escaped us, but we will get it up shortly. During this morning's Bible study and the various table discussions we have had since we started today, we have discussed peace and justice issues in your context. And I heard, as I walked around the room, many of the tables engaging quite deep conversations about this. And so the question that we want to ask you to consider on your tables for the next 10 minutes, how can the Peace and Justice Network, along with the instruments of communion and institutions of the communion, support your peace and justice efforts? So how can the Peace and Justice Network, along with the other institutions and instruments of communion, support your peace and justice efforts? And you may want to think about what resources do you need, what resources do you use, and just how best can we support you. So for the next 10 minutes, and of course we will call on a table or three And there will also be an opportunity for those who are not called upon to submit their comments via the usual ACC-18 email address. 10 minutes. We can call upon table 6. Table 6, do you have someone who can share a bit with us what you've been discussing?
Thanks. We were all very receptive to the Peace and Justice Network report, but for some of us, the availability of these materials is something we've only become aware of. And so we were focusing on how member churches could be sensitised to the availability of this information. And one of our members suggested a pop-up so that there was a notification when there was new materials available, maybe an app from the Anglican Communion Office on everyone's phone. Would be something to consider. And we also wondered, as a prior step, maybe whether some Google Analytics could be undertaken to actually engage how much the information is being used, so that would help in working out how to disseminate it better.
Thank you so much. I will comment at the end. Table 7, can we ask you for some comments?
Table 7, we've shared views from Angola, Kenya, Korea, Myanmar, Bangladesh, South India, and Panama and Malawi. Our common observation is that sometimes in our dioceses, the leadership doesn't want to take up the challenge to speak out. And therefore, the request is that Peace and Justice Network should be the mouthpiece. As for the other dioceses, they would want to speak out, but they need support when they do so. We have also shared some information relating to the need for proper training. It looks like the church, in some dioceses, the church leadership lacks awareness or training, so they should be supported in that regard. yeah, largely that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Table 7. And I will make our usher's job very easy by going to Table 15. Is that behind Table 7? 14. Table 14.
Thank you. We observed at a macro level that these are vast issues. Peace and justice is a huge portfolio with many, many, many different aspects. And none of the issues are easy. None of them are susceptible to quick fixes. And we live in a world now where things sort of pop up on the front page of the newspaper, and then by the next week they're gone and we forget about them. And so how do we support each other in the things that have dropped off the front page of the newspaper? How do we support each other for the long haul? Because these are generational issues, not quick fix 5-minute issues. So that was kind of the macro issue that we addressed.
Thank you, Table 14. And I hand over back to the Vice Chair. Thank you so much for the engagement, and we've taken careful note of your comments. Do remember to send an email with the fuller details to the ACC-18 at AnglicanCommunion.org. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you to everyone who has presented this morning. I think we've had a really fruitful morning, and it's been good to see good and engaged discussion going on the tables. A couple of practical things. We'll be moving over for a celebration of the Eucharist shortly. Please ensure that we are back for 2 o'clock. I know on the one page it says 2:15 start. But it really helps us if you can be back so that we can start at 2. On one page it looks like it's 2, on the other page it says 2:15. So please try and make it 2, because that gives us more time to engage in the items that we're going to be talking about.